Do you want to know the top 5 Eastern European / Russian L's of 2016? If so, stay tuned to this video. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Before I begin, make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I also have to release this disclaimer. Now, I am a boxing fan. I don't care about your color, creed, nationality, age, or gender. However, the reason I am making this video is because there has been, from the media, this outpour of support to the point where people were talking about the Eastern European style / Eastern European Russian takeover, meaning more and more people. I've seen interviews from Bob Arum. A simple Google search will reveal everything that I'm talking about. Top ranked promoter, long time. He's on record and he's giving praise, saying that the Eastern Europeans are taking over and they're becoming so dominant. And it's not just Bob Arum. HBO is another big box entity that were pretty much promoting the same agenda. And as I tell you guys time and time again on my channel, you can't bet with your hearts. At the end of the day, skills pay the bills. Now, there are a lot of great fighters from all around the world, including Russia, Eastern European. One of my favorites is Vasyl Lomachenko. He's had a great year. You know what I mean? Moved up in weight, stopped Rocky Martinez, easy work. And he also beat Nicholas Walters. He made him no moss. First person to ever do this. You also have Alexander Usyk, who is definitely making a name for himself. 2 back-to-back good wins. He became a champion in his fight with Glavowski. And then he also fought on the Bernard Hopkins Joe Smith card, and he had a dominant performance there. So definitely a lot of talent coming from Russia and Eastern European. However, again, like I said, people like Bob Arum, he says Eastern European fighters are beginning to dominate in boxing. HBO said more so the same thing. Now, I always thought that the American style is great and very hard to beat. And again, there's people from all around the world. It's not like, oh, the American style wins each and every time. But I thought it was always inflated, and it seemed like more so a ploy to talk about certain fighters and promote certain fighters. So I had to make this list because from what I see, in my view, it hasn't shown to be quite the truth. And there's been some L's that have been had from Russian and Eastern European fighters. So I'm gonna go through the list, give you guys the top 5 Eastern European Russian L's for this year. Now, in at number 5, Edward Troyanovsky, right? Now, the reason I got to put him in at number 5, he was an undefeated fighter. He had about 25 fights, 22 knockouts, something right around there. And the thing is, he's 36 years old. People were saying this is the guy at 140 that can beat Terrence Crawford, who has been on a tear. He has 3 wins on his resume just this year that were good. I think he stopped everybody. Yeah, he stopped Hank Lundy this year. Oh, actually, he didn't stop Victor Postol. So 2 of the 3 he stopped. John Molina, Hank Lundy, and then he didn't stop Victor Postol. But for Troyanovsky, he was the guy that people were saying was the mandatory. He's promoted by Roy Jones, and they were saying he was the guy that could beat Terrence Crawford. And Terrence Crawford, some people were even saying he was ducking this guy, right? Now, he just fought in December. It flew under the radar unless you're like a hardcore boxing fan. He was brutally knocked out in round 1. And again, watch that particular fight. He fought in Russia. He's from Russia. He actually fought close to his birthplace. And he fought a guy named Julius Indongo. Link in the description. I'll try to put the link in the description. I can't air for copyright reasons. First round, he was out of position, very low, and Indongo hit him with a beast of a shot, and he was out. Probably one of 2016's most memorable knockouts. It was that bad. Like, I'm trying to think of a knockout that was worse. Maybe Deontay Wilder versus Arthur Spilka. But it was a bad knockout. He was knocked out. He was cold. Like, you knew he wasn't getting up. So I got to put him in at number 5. Again, people were saying this is the guy to beat Terrence Crawford, and I don't believe that was the case based on losing to Julius Indongo, who is a guy, they were fighting for the IBO belt. I hadn't really even heard of Indongo. I mean, maybe some of the other boxing fans, if you guys have heard of him, but he just kind of came out of nowhere. He was a undefeated guy as well, I believe, and he just blasted him out of this world. And it just goes to show you in boxing, because the crazy thing is he doesn't have like a supreme knockout. Like, even today he has a record of 21-0 with 11 knockouts, so he has a 52% knockout ratio. So before the last fight with Troyanovsky, he was a little bit lower than that. So in at number 5, I gotta put the man Edward Troyanovsky on the list. In at number 4, Vyacheslav Shabransky. Now, he just fought recently, first ever career defeat. He signed a Golden Boy. He's from the Ukraine, and he was getting a lot of hype, a lot of buzz behind him. Some people were even saying things to the effect of, he's ready for Andre Ward now. He can beat Andre Ward. And Sullivan Barrera was supposed to be more so his coming out party. But in fact, it was his demise. Like, he actually lost to Sullivan Barrera in emphatic fashion. Now, he got knocked down in the first round. Sullivan Barrera got knocked down after that, I think in the second round. And it didn't look like Sullivan Barrera was as hurt as Alexander was hurt when Sullivan dropped him. But Sullivan Barrera went on to knock him down 2 more times for a total of 3 knockouts, and then eventually stop him, I think in the 7th round. So I got to put that in at number 4. The amount of praise that Shabransky was getting and what people were saying he was and how good he was right now at the moment. I mean, if you put someone in the talks of Andre Ward, then that means you believe they're really good. And to see him lose to a guy that just lost to Andre Ward this year in March and was inactive, that to me is an upset. That's an L, because Sullivan Barrera took his first ever career defeat at the hands of Andre Ward, plus got knocked down. I covered that fight live, and he hadn't fought since then. Meanwhile, you look at Vyacheslav Shabransky, and he had 2 fights this particular year, so he was far more active, and he ended up getting stopped and knocked down 3 times. So it just goes to show you the experience wasn't quite there. So I got to put him in at number 4. In at number 3, Sergey Kovalev. Now, we all know Sergey Kovalev is a great fighter, and he's from Russia. And the reason I didn't put him at the back of the list, because obviously his fight with Ward, he didn't get embarrassed. He didn't go out there and get dogged. But based on the impact and who the Crusher was, I got to still put him on the list, because he fought against Andre Ward. I did have Andre Ward winning a tight fight, a close fight, but based on who Crusher was, you were the Crusher. You were the Ivan Drago more so than the Apollo Creed. You know what I mean? Ward was supposed to be the Apollo Creed, basically, in that equation. He was the guy moving up, who had recently moved up to light heavyweight. You were the destructive bully and power puncher, and you came up short and lost pretty much the second half of the fight. You did good early, created a knockdown, but it's like you banked on that and you were never able to reduplicate that particular success. Now, I know Kovalev and some people and fans, they dispute this and they don't think he should have lost, but facts are facts. He did lose. He no longer has the belts, and it was a tight fight. It was a close fight. There's nothing anyone could say, but based on who Kovalev was, you got to put him on the list. I got to put him on the list because he took his first ever professional loss to a guy who recently moved up, and that's just the way the cookie crisp crumbles. But overall, it was a good performance. I can't wait for the rematch. I just think Kovalev, those body shots were getting to him in the second half, dramatically slowed him down, and he has a beautiful jab. I think he just he became a little bit spotty with the jab later in the fight, maybe from fatigue, maybe because Ward was out jabbing him. I'm not sure, but I think he the second half, he lost his focus on the game plan, and it looked like his work got a little bit sloppier. The rounds were still competitive. He was still boxing pretty good, but it wasn't the way he was doing it in the early rounds. So that's why I gave the fight to Ward. And in a close fight, he lost. He didn't, as a champion in the championship levels or the championship rounds, I feel like you gotta produce, and it's kind of like who wants it more. Like, how bad do you want it? And to me, Ward getting up from knockdown, dealing with the adversity, he got sharper as the fight progressed, more so than Kovalev. I don't really think there's anyone out there that could say Kovalev got sharper as the fight progressed, or he did anything as good as, name a round that Kovalev had that was as good as his second round. Point blank, period. Right? But Ward, dealing with that early adversity, worked his way back into the fight. It was a workmanlike performance, and again, it's not the ultimate L. Kovalev, he held a good account of himself. I think he didn't have the same fire and intensity towards the second half, the stretch of the fight. So I got to put him on the list, Sergey Kovalev of Russia. In at number 2, Viktor the Iceman Postol of Ukraine. Now, I got to put Viktor Postol on the list. Good fighter. He was arguably the number 2 guy in the division, or number 1, whatever you want to call him, until he fought Terence Crawford. He was coming off a great performance versus Lucas the Machine Matisse. He unplugged the machine, he frustrated the machine, and he caused the machine to quit. Became a champion with the WBC. The first person also to stop Lucas Matisse, and he came in with a pretty solid resume. He stopped Selçuk Aydin with a nasty knockout. Lucas Matisse, he had a win over Hank Lundy, and he also came into the fight with some attributes that Terence Crawford probably wasn't used to. Terence Crawford has a good size frame for the 140-pound division, but for the first time in a little while, we seen Crawford in there with someone who was noticeably taller than him, and that was in Viktor Postol. Postol was taller, I believe had the longer reach, and also a good boxer. So most fans were under the impression that this was a 50-50 fight. I covered the fight. I was extremely close to the ring, and it didn't look like a 50-50 fight. Point blank, period. I thought Crawford did the better work. He had the better game plan. Viktor Postol kind of looked like a deer in headlights, and to me, he didn't go for broke. And it got to a point in the fight where Viktor Postol needed a knockout to win, and I don't think he was really pressing for the knockout. I think he was doing just enough to stay safe and look like he was trying, but he knew he was outgunned and overmatched, so he wasn't doing enough. Like, it gets to a point where you got to just, at that point, when you need a knockout to win, you have to just go for broke. I'm not saying you have to be sloppy, but you got to step on the gas. Like, look at Austin Trout versus Canelo. They did the bullshit open scoring. Austin Trout knew he needed a knockout to win, and he got way more aggressive than he normally would, trying to press the attack on Canelo. Ultimately, he paid for it because Canelo, being a good counterpuncher and a strong puncher, he knocked Austin Trout down. But that was the fighter spirit in Austin Trout. He wanted to win the fight. He was undefeated at the time, and he knew his O would go if he didn't try something. Based on the open scoring, I thought it was way closer than the judges had it at the time of the open scoring. But Trout, he tried to switch it, and even though that's not his fighting style, he still tried to turn from boxer to more of a pressure style or brawler style to create something big, a knockdown or hurt Canelo or whatever, knowing he wasn't the biggest puncher. And it got to a point where that's what Viktor Postol needed to do, and he didn't do it. Post-fight, Freddie Roach was like, Terence Crawford, he's just too fast in there. His speed really troubled us. And I mean, Postol said something like Crawford was running, but we all know what it is. It doesn't, I don't want to hear running and this and that. You knew who you were fighting. You knew his amateur background. You can study several tapes from Gamboa to Bradis Prescott. All these, you probably look at his amateur fights on YouTube if you're so inclined. So I don't like to hear that, oh, he ran and stuff. You're the taller man. Jab his lights out. Disrupt that running. stop him from running. I don't even call it running, it's lateral movement, but you guys know what I'm saying. So I got to put Victor Postol in at number 2 because he got knocked down twice and he lost a 50-50 fight, and it wasn't even competitive. I went to Las Vegas under the impression that it was a very dangerous fight for Crawford. I was picking Crawford. I thought he had the tools to get it done, but I thought Crawford would have to bite down. And to this date, as far as a professional career, Gamboa was the toughest fight that I've seen Crawford in. A lot of these other fights, he's making it look like it's mincemeat, like it's easy work. It didn't look. I talked to Crawford post-fight after, like we were walking with him. He didn't seem out of breath. His face wasn't marked up after the Postol fight. He looked cool. I think he went to an after party or something like that. And one of the cameramen, the reporters, crashed into a truck and fell down. It's all on my YouTube, but I don't know. I didn't really see a scratch on Terrence Crawford. So I got to put the man Victor Iceman Postol. He can definitely bounce back from it, but I got to put him for 2016 in at number 2 because in the Crawford fight, he got dogged. Now, in at number 1, I couldn't leave this man off the list. For the Ego 2016 top 5 biggest L's list, I gotta put, drum roll please, Alexander Povetkin of Russia. Now, the reason he goes on this list is because he failed 2 drug tests within 12 calendar months and 2 massive paydays that his promoter was forking over a lot of cash. I believe for the Wilder fight, roughly $7.1 million was being split in that particular fight. And I think he had a win bonus. They had a certain amount, maybe 10% or so, set aside in the escrow account as a win bonus. Everything was on the line. You knock out the WBC champion Deontay Wilder or just beat him, then you're the man, right? Period. You're a champion, you're an Olympian, and you would have worldwide coverage. Bottom line, heavyweight knockouts are brutal. Anytime you see a heavyweight knockout, it's nasty. So again, if Povetkin were to beat Wilder, then he would be on the map in the United States, not just Russia. And he tested positive A and B sample for a substance that's made in Russian pharmacies called meldonium. Now, a lot of people immediately said, oh, he's a cheater, right? It was revealed that that drug, meldonium, had recently been banned, January 2016. And due to basically a loophole, they weren't able to distinguish when it was ingested because him and his team said they ingested it before the ban in September of 2015. And since there's no way to prove or disprove that claim, the WBC said, okay, we're going to no longer suspend you, but now you're not the number 1 mandatory for Wilder. We're going to put up this little obstacle, this little hurdle for you. We're going to put you in a WBC eliminator with the other highest ranking person that fought Wilder, and that's Bermane Stiverne, right? You fight him, winner gets Deontay Wilder. Now, went to purse bid. Again, Povetkin's promoter, World of Boxing, Rabinski, he had the highest bid for the Bermane Stiverne fight with Alexander Povetkin. Second fight he chose to stage in Russia, giving Povetkin the hometown advantage, right? Povetkin, it got all the way up to past the weigh-in. They had the Friday night weigh-ins. Both made weight because it's heavyweight, so they don't really have to make weight per se. And they got to the weigh-ins, and it was later revealed, hours before the fight, that Povetkin failed yet another drug test. Now, this drug test was for a completely different drug than the first time that was on the ban list. This time, he tested positive for Ostarine. So, to me, the whole program has to be examined, because how are you going to fail 2 drug tests in about 8 months with 2 different fighters and 2 different drugs? And you had the hometown advantage in both of those fights. Not to mention that you had a pretty penny. Now, I don't know how much he got paid because somehow, some way, they brought Johan Duhaupas, who Wilder already stopped, and they brought him into the fight, and Povetkin stopped him. So I don't know the underworkings or whatever of that, so how much he was able to get for that particular fight, but he was able to commence somehow and fight somebody. It just wasn't Bermane Stiverne, and it wasn't a part of the WBC eliminator. So to me, that is the #1 biggest Eastern European / Russian L, because those were two massive paydays. Those were two massive opportunities. Either one, whether you fought Wilder straight away or fought Bermane Stiverne, if you were to beat him, then it would lead you to Wilder, and that would be a big payday. And again, if you beat an American champion, the last American champion, or the first American champion since Shannon the Cannon Briggs, then that would be huge. You would make national headlines if you knocked out Wilder, right? Because so far in his professional career, he's undefeated. So I got to put Alexander Povetkin in. And that concludes the 2016 biggest L's list from the Eastern Europeans. And again, I'm not singling anybody out. I don't have any problem with any different region. But like I said, based on the media, the media manipulation and agenda, the Eastern European region particularly, they were getting showed a lot of love, to the point where people were saying they're dominant, they're taking over, so we got to look at it. If that's the case, if that's what you told us all year, then we got to take a look at it further and see. And again, in some of the biggest matches with Eastern Europeans or Russians, they lost. Some, albeit close, like the Kovalev War. That was a close fight, right? He still lost though. And then others weren't that close. Like I said, the Crawford versus Postol. I didn't think that was a close fight at all. And I mean, even if I covered the Crawford Molina fight too. Molina was at least trying to win the fight. I genuinely feel that he was trying to be awkward and catch. And it was like he was kind of fighting like Maidana a little bit, just like real loopy, choppy shots, but a weird off-balance rhythm. He knew he wasn't the superior boxer. He knew he's not going to outsmart Crawford, so to speak, or he's not more athletic than Crawford. But I still think it was more gamemanship and a better game plan. It just so happens that Crawford is so good, it didn't matter, and he still was able to stop John Molina, even though he has power and stuff like that. But for Victor Postol, I didn't really see. I'm not gonna say he wasn't trying, but he seemed more content going the distance, right? But let me know what you guys think of my 2016 list. I will be back with some more 2016 lists. That is probably the first one, but stay tuned to the channel. We're gonna close out this year the right way. Make sure you like and subscribe. As always, hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video is Ego signing off. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.